Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm reviewing decks submitted by my viewers. And I've, for some reason, had to record that line a lot of times because I kept messing it up. But I'm good now. I'm back in the groove. And these decks are interesting. I have them divided in the future, I'm going to have them divided into two categories of decks: serious decks and like funny decks that are kind of weird ideas that are probably not very good at all and probably pretty bad, but weird and interesting. But today I'm going to be taking a look at 5 decks. One of them is a quote serious deck, but a bunch of them were before I really categorized them. So these decks, if you want to submit your own decks, you can go into my Discord server, which is linked down below in the description and probably the comment section as well, explaining some of this stuff. And you just paste your deck list here, and I'll take a look at it. In addition to that, there's also a custom cards thing that I'm going to be doing where you create your custom cards, and some people are already submitting cards for that. And if you want to, you can also do that. And I have some big ideas for those, in addition to just looking at them, because it's pretty interesting to see people's ideas of custom cards. It's kind of weird, kind of silly, but kind of fun. And so you can submit that there, and there's a little info on making them. But then that's another thing I'll be doing in the future. I don't know how commonly I'll be doing these videos. It just depends how many decks and cards I'll be getting, and they're two separate things. And yeah, just post your list or post the card there, and nothing else to talk about. So let's just hop right into the video. This first list here is from Gamer719, and it is a Gyarados list with some pretty unique things going on here. And this focuses around Gyarados and Magikarp and Palkia V-Star. And I've just glanced at these lists so far, and this one's pretty interesting. So first of all, we have 6 Gyaradoses. We have 2 EXs and 2 of the one single prize and 2 of this other single prizer. So immediately looking at the list, I don't really know what to think about it. It's kind of weird. But you have this Gyarados, which has 2 attacks, but Wild Splash isn't that good. It's 250 for 4, and then you mill 5 from your own deck. But you do have 170 HP, 180 on the other one, and then 300 on the EX, so really high HP here. But this one says flip coin until you get tails. For each heads, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck for 1 colorless. This is a card that I've seen some on the ladder, honestly, probably more than it deserves, because it's not that good, but it is an option, and it's kind of fun. Then we have this other Gyarados, and the list does not run a ton of great ways to power it up, but you can with Palkia V-Star. And Berserker Tackle does 200 for 4 and 52 itself. Again, not very good. And you have 4 Retreat, really high Retreat on most of these. But then you have Vengeful Storm, 80 for 3, but if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, so if you're losing, then you do 100 more damage. 180 for 3 is pretty solid. It's I'd describe it as like a good number. It's one, if you've ever played Zoroark box decks, you'll have seen this number a lot, or very similar numbers to it. And it's pretty solid, good for 2-shotting or 1-shotting. It's just a very solid number, but a little awkward. Then we have this other Gyarados, I guess it's Gyarados EX, so the 5th and 6th Gyaradoses, and it's a Terra Pokemon EX, and so once it's on your bench, it's immune to damage from both players, which is not something that'll be coming into effect too much, but it is a thing. Then you can do 100 for 4, or 100 for 3, sorry, and then 180, but if your opponent's active has damage on it, you do 360 for 5, which isn't very good. So those are kind of interesting, but the big idea here is going to be to use Magikarp. Magikarp here has this really, and I mean a really interesting attack, Raging Fin. It does 30, it does 10, but 30 more for each Magikarp in your discard pile. And this is going to be starting off obviously at, well, I'd say 10, but starting off at 0 because you want to use double turbo energy probably. But then you have the 1 Magikarp, and then let's say you have 4 Gyarados in your discard and 3 Magikarp in your discard. And so you're adding, so then you're at, I think, 200 damage if I'm doing the math in my head right with a double turbo. So it's pretty good. And then you can use Relicanth to copy this. So you can play Gyarados EX, and Gyarados EX, the 300 HP, as I said, really high. All the single prize HP is also pretty high, and you can use their other attacks potentially if you survive a hit. But 300 HP is a lot to be able to knock out a Pokemon. And your Relicanth, with Memory Dive as its ability, you can, each your evolved Pokemon, so your Gyaradoses, can use the attacks of the previous evolutions, which is pretty interesting. And then you also have the Radiant Greninja. You can attack with an Origin Form Palkia V-Star, which accelerates energy and can attack and stuff. There to accelerate the energy, though, so pretty interesting. Outside of that, we have Gyarados, Explorer's Guidance. Explorer's Guidance is kind of interesting. I'm not sure why this card's in the deck specifically. I know it does allow you to discard cards, but I feel like Professor's Research would be better. Explorer's Guidance, it looks at the top 6 cards and puts 2 of them into your hand, and you discard the other ones. So it does allow you to dig deeper, and you don't lose your current hand. And there is some solid value in it. I guess it's probably an underrated supporter. If we look at decks that play it in Limitless, they are literally all ancient decks, I think. Oh no, that's not an ancient deck. Doesn't run. Oh yeah, it does run a Koraidon though, so it does run an ancient Pokemon, and the rest are all ancient decks in some sense. So I think it is an interesting supporter and a solid option. We see an Iono, so, 2 Serenas, 3 Iridas, so some weird splits of supporters. I mean, not like absurd splits, but there's a lot of splits, and we also see EXP share, which is interesting to stream basic energies. And with like the one Arven, and then you have Hero's Cape. I think Hero's Cape's a solid ace spec. I'm a bit nervous about the consistency, so I could see adding Secret Box. I think that would be the best ace spec. Or you could do Unfair Stamp, because you can search that with the Irida or Arven, or I guess Cypher Maniac's code breaking. But normally with Unfair Stamp, you want, I mean, maybe 4 searches is enough. But sometimes more is nice with Unfair Stamp. So I could see Unfair Stamp. Escape is really nice. 400 damage is almost impossible to do. You also see only 1 missed energy. I feel like that's a little hard to hit missed energies here for Mooniax or Guillotine V Star. It was something that just instantly one-shots you, and that's not what you want happening. So this is a pretty interesting combo. I'm interested in hearing, if you're watching this video, how this deck is if you've actually played it. But overall, pretty interesting concepts there. You got lots of discarding. I would actually add a 4th Ultra Ball. I'd drop a Capturing Roman Ultra. Oh yeah, the Pokemon Search. I didn't realize that. Pokemon Search is weird with this deck because you need to get the Magikarps, but you don't want them in play, so you can't use Nest Ball. I mean, you want like maybe one in play, but you need them in the discard, right? So that's awkward. Capturing Roma on a coin flip gets either an evolved Pokemon or a basic Pokemon. Wait, is that what it says? No, I think it gets an evolution Pokemon or a basic Pokemon. I said the wrong term. It's slightly different, but yeah. And then the 3 Earthen Vessel. I don't know. I mean, I'd probably drop an Earthen Vessel for an Ultra Ball. And Serena's kind of a weird choice. It's a discard anywhere from 1 to 3 cards from your hand, and then draw till you have 5 cards in hand. So it's kind of like a worse research. It's a little different, but it's worse. It's not drawing as many cards. Can save cards in your hand, but generally it's worse. Or switching one of your opponent's bench views where they're active. So I would play research over Serena. Or I could play like more like another Irida or something. But overall, a really interesting list, and a really unique concept, one that I haven't thought too much about, because Relicanth is a really cool card, but the biggest use if we pull up lists is oh wow, this is really, really underwhelming. Let's pull up some more lists here. This is the Japanese lists. One of the uses is that allows, okay, it's literally not used here essentially at all, but it allows you to copy pre-evolutions. Obviously, that's what it does, but it allows you to copy them, but with more HP. So there's the Magzone EX control deck. That's a pretty cool deck. In my opinion, it's not that good, but it's an interesting concept. But there you go, from like 90 HP to 330. This is an even bigger gap because it's from 30 to 300, which is just absurd. The lowest HP basic in the game to, I believe, the highest HP stage 1. I guess I was gonna say Blissey now. Wigglytuff. I misspelled that. Wigglytuff EX does have more HP with a special energy attached, but that's not always going to happen. So yeah, just the highest raw HP, stage 1 HP in the game, I'm pretty sure. VMAXs aren't stage 1, so that's not why I'm not counting them. But yeah, that's a really interesting concept. Okay, this next list here is from Colin, and this is pretty interesting. It's a Lost Zone deck focused around Koraidon EX. I have seen this. YouTuber Professor Poke made a video on this, and I saw that, and that was pretty interesting, I guess. I don't remember it super well, but it was kind of cool because, Lost Zone wants to use basic Pokemon Lost Zone engine. For those of you who don't know, you put cards in the Lost Zone using Comfy Colas Experiment and Lost Vacuum, which this list runs 3 Lost Vacuums, which is interesting. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But then you use Mirage Gate is the main Pokemon to get value out of it, and you search for up to 2 basic energies of different types if you have at least 7 cards in the Lost Zone, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Koraidon EX, honestly, I forgot its attack cost, but it does. Oh, it has 2 attacks here, but Kaiser Tackle for fighting, which is kind of awkward, but certainly not unpayable. It does 280, which is enough to one-shot a lot of Pokemon. Gyarados EX is surviving it, but If you're looking at something like really any V-Star, you're probably one-shotting those, and pretty much any Stage 1 equivalent Pokemon, because VMAXs don't really see much play right now. That's pretty good. Retribution Strike is not a bad attack, especially with a 60 to yourself, and we don't see Ancient Booster and Capsule, which I think is fine. But then after, a few turns, or even just one turn, your HP is then down to 170. When people talk about two prizes, that like 180, 170, 160 range is considered pretty bad because you are vulnerable to a lot of things, a lot more things than like 230, which is considered on the higher end, actually very high for two prizes basic. So you know, that 60 to yourself isn't great, but it's not terrible. Roaring Moon EX does 200 to itself, so this is certainly better than that. And you're not putting yourself super vulnerable, just a little more vulnerable to something like, say, an Arceus V-Star. Much easier than if you had your full 230, but whatever, that's not that bad. And then you have Retribution Strike, which is 20 for 2 colors, 10 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. And then in terms of your other attackers, you have one Radiant Charizard, one Sableye, and two Cramorants. So we do see Psychic Energies for Sableye's. And then the same number of Fighting and Fire Energies. Koraidon needs more Fighting than Fire, but then Radiant Charizard is a Fire Pokemon. So that's all solid. Radiant Charizard is a Radiant, I think makes sense. It's a little weird because Radiant Charizard does 250, Koraidon EX is doing 280. And so they kind of fulfill similar roles in the deck, which in some ways can be nice, but in some ways is really not nice because I mean you'd rather have more options in a Lost Zone box, sort for a toolbox. I mean toolbox means you have a lot of different options, and Radiant Charizard and Koraidon EX aren't super different. Radiant Charizard does have lower HP, but is a single prizer and high HP for a single prizer, so it's pretty solid as an attacking option. It's just a really good attacker. And I don't know what other Radiant you'd play. You could run Radiant Greninja is a classic, but I certainly am not a big fan of it when you aren't able to attack with it, and you probably want. You can't do that in Sableye, because I would not add 4 energy types. I think 3 energy types is really solid. So the energy split's like really good, I think. This is definitely something I like a lot. And then I actually could see cutting your fire for a psychic, but that's probably actually no, that wouldn't be so good. So for Mirage Gates, pretty normal stuff here. The 3 lost vacuums is kind of interesting. You lost on a card from your hand and lost on a tool or stadium in play, either yours or your opponent's, and they go to the lost zone. So that's kind of interesting. Obviously, if your opponent has certain really important tools or stadiums in play for them, it's really great to lost zone them. Specifically tools. I feel like stadiums aren't so important right now. And by the way, I believe these lists were submitted before Twilight Masquerade, so Charizard EX was the big deck. So that's why Maximum Belt, you do 50 more to EXs, meaning Koraidon is getting pushed from 280 to 330, which is enough to, I was going to say one-shot everything, but one-shot most things. Looking at like Dragapult EX, which wasn't out at this time, but then Charizard EX and maybe Gardevoir EX. There were some Pokemon that pushed it over the line too. And then you have the 3 Artisans, but those aren't like the Maximum Belt's not something you're looking to Lost Zone, although in certain matchups it's fine to Lost Zone. And then like Artisan, I guess you could Lost Zone, but it's not like amazing. So I feel like I would add so in terms of switching, we see 4 switch card 3 switch. So you could add a Beach Court. I wouldn't actually mind that because it does allow you to it's another target to Lost Vacuum, which could be nice. And then the 3 Super Rod is like higher as well. So I'm looking at cards to cut if you want to add those in. But I don't actually know what they would be. I'm not a big fan of 1 Poke Year. I know some people like it, and it has value. That's not something I'd personally do. And then the 1 Roxanne, you might not always hit it when you need it. But pretty solid Lost Zone stuff. Honestly, pretty standard Lost Zone stuff. Nothing super crazy. The 3 Buddy Buddy Poffin, 4 Nest Ball is pretty normal. I think I don't play a ton of Lost Zone right now, but yeah, but pretty solid stuff. Pretty interesting stuff as well. Next up, this deck is from Kiwi Bird Collectible. This is a pretty interesting list. It's a control list. They said that this was like a draft of a list, essentially, and they forgot a Switch and Gust, which, is important. They do have a Penny as a Switch card, but then there's some pretty interesting cards here. So, as I said, a control list, and just some really cool stuff going on here. And I'm sorry it's a little bit blurry. It's not that bad, and I will pull up the cards. But the main idea here is, I think the main idea here is a Chandelure Mill, although you do have a few different options. So we do have Mimikyu. Mimikyu, for those of you who don't know, it walls Pokemon EX and Vs, so they are unable to damage it, which is really good. Keep in mind they can do effective attacks, so special conditions, placing damage counters, instant knockouts, stuff like that will hit through Mimikyu essentially. We do see 1 copy of Mist Energy though. which is useful in those situations. But they might be able to counter it, especially now with Enhanced Hammer. But that's not super common. And then the two Luminous Energy, this is a little weird to me. I mean, I get it, and I think it is good, but Mist Energy, on Mimikyu, if you have Mist Energy, then you can't attack, because Luminous Energy is an energy of any type, and the only way to get Psychic Energy on. But that being said, that means that you will now no longer be able to actually use the Luminous Energy to with the Mist Energy, because it's, two special energies, you're going to be turning off Luminous Energy, which is a bit of an issue. Um, but then, it's I don't know. I think that's fine. But I could see adding a regular Psychic Energy in. And then we have the two Lampents, and then the Chandelures, and the three Litwicks, which is kind of interesting. So Litwick just mills one, discards the top card of your opponent's deck for one fire, which is honestly pretty solid. But then the Lampents, honestly, I'm not. Oh, I misspelled it. I'm not so familiar with this Lampent. This one I believe is 20. Yeah, and then on a coin flip, you discard an energy from your opponent's active, which is not bad. And then apparently there's another one here, Luring Fireball. Okay, this is interesting. For one fire, one colorless, switching one of your opponent's bench to the active, does 30 to the new active. And then Chandelure, I actually forgot its attack, but it's 90 for 2. But then your ability, Mountain Roasting on play, when you play this Pokemon to evolve when your Pokemon in play, then during your turn, apparently. So if I don't see how you do this during your opponent's turn, but if you did, it wouldn't work. You can discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. So it is a mill-based deck. I think Chi-EX could be played in this list. Chi-EX discards the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck for one fire, which is twice as much as Litwick, but I understand why you're not playing it. In terms of attackers, we really just have one outside of like Litwick and Lampent and Mimikyu. You could technically attack with Cloth EX, but don't do that. Oh, you have Radiant Charizard as well, but we have Porygon. Porygon's an interesting card, which I think one time one person tried to like convince me this card didn't exist, which was like a bold take. But anyways, we got Brand's Calculation, which says for one colorless, look at the top 4 cards of either player's deck, which should probably be your opponent's, but could be yours, and put them back in any order. So this is pretty interesting. This is a card I think I've heard very little talk about. It's pretty good for, I mean, it lets you reorder your opponent's deck, which could be useful. So control is a deck, right? This is a control deck where you just want to disrupt your opponent, but there's a type of control called Handlock. Let me see if I can find it as a deck. Amulet Handlock. So this is a Handlock deck, and what it does is it does a bunch of different things, but it like removes all your opponent's cards from the hand, or makes sure that they're not useful. But then it has Chip Chip Ice Axe, which looks at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and kind of reorders. It does some stuff, kind of like Porygon. So a little different, but similar enough. So Porygon here, pretty interesting, pretty powerful for that, and you do have 5 energies to use it, so that is pretty usable. And then from there, you also have Radiant Charizard as another attacker. It does. I mentioned it before. I didn't say what it does, but it does 250 for 5. But for each prize your opponent's taking us 1 colorless less, so near end game, it's really powerful as just a single attachment. So that's pretty interesting as just like a late game attacker, and really solid in Lost Zone as well. This was before Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, so I would say that's probably better. It is up to you. That you have Turbo Scenario Penny, so you could like use that to loop and stuff as well with the Blood Moon Ursaluna EX. Probably not with the Radiant Charizard. Also, the 2 Magma Basins to accelerate energy. I just play 1 or even none. I feel like its use cases are very niche. It's just for Radiant Charizard. I think Cloth EX, which I think is another card people might not be as familiar with. Counterattacking Pincer. This Pokemon is in the active, and damage from your opponent's attack, even if it is knocked out, but it doesn't have to be. Discard an energy from the attacking Pokemon your opponent's active. You do have Falling Press, which is 100 or 180 for 3 on a coin flip. It is usable technically in this deck if you get the 2 fires and a luminous, but that's pretty unlikely. And that literally has to be the exact combination of energies, because if you attach another luminous or the mist, then you can't attack with it. So that's not so good, but the ability is pretty solid. You can loop this. I would add another penny. I don't know. 2 Taro and a penny might be fine. A few changes I'd make with this. Of course, you do want gusting. Oh, and then it's a Pidgeot EX engine, and we see Technical Machine Evolution. The energy counts are relatively low. We have Rotom V to end your turn and draw cards as well. And then we do have 4 Rare Candies. So, and then 4 Arvins and an Iono, pretty standard engine for control. I don't think you need Daisy's help. Most controllers don't run Daisy's help, and I don't think you need it here. Or Arc Phone, 3 Buddy Buddy Poppin', 4 Nest Ball, 3 Ultra Ball. I think you should cut like a Buddy Buddy, or probably maybe a Nest Ball for an Ultra Ball. That's an option. That's generally good to do, although it happens as you become like better at a deck. So when I create control decks, I often don't have 4 Ultra Ball, but 4 Ultra Balls are generally good because once you are more confident and know what to discard, um, then discarding cards is like something that you like won't really mind too much. So, but anyway, the 3 Ultra Ball, really good. And then the Techno Machine Evolution is interesting. I would probably just play 1 copy. I feel like you could get away with that because you're gonna probably Arbin for it anyways. If you aren't Arbining, you're probably not getting it. And then you do need some counter catches, right? That's probably something you definitely want in this deck. You could add Boss as well. It depends how like normal control you want this. Um, and then you need some way to like loop stuff. You have Silene and Palpad, but that's not super reliable. So I mean, I'd add a Team Yelch here. And I'd add Regieleki. Regieleki recovers a trainer from your discard for 1 colorless, which is really nice. So you can loop Professor Toad's scenario using that, because oftentimes, let's see, I wonder if Chandelure has been played in any decks from the tournament database. I actually don't know. No, it has not. Um, let's see. In Japan, it has though. So here we can see, and it's played with Blood Moon, or sorry, with just regular Ursaluna. And Ursaluna attacks recovers 2 cards. This means you can recover Rare Candy and Chandelure, but you don't have to do that. You can just recover the Lampets, and you play 2 copies of that. So I think that's fine. Bench base is a little sketchy as well. You want Pidgeot, and then you might want 2 Chandelures, which is awkward. And then you have probably like a I don't know. I guess that's not that bad. And you have like some attacker, so that's fine. You can also loop Cloth, but looping Cloth you need to play a supporter, and then you need to play a supporter to loop Chandelure. So I would say, I don't know. I'd change up a few things there. The 3 Super Res also seems kind of high. Certainly there's value, but I'd play Team Yellow's here, which can recover Pokemon as well as supporters. So I think that kind of covers that. Um, but outside of that, a pretty cool concept. And I think Chandelure Control is pretty cool, and this is more focused on it, more focused on getting that set up. And the Team Evolution is pretty cool as well, as an inclusion in control, which is not a card I've played. It's a card I might look to play at some point in the future, but pretty cool. And I always like Mimikyu. I always like to be able to attack with it, so that's good. I don't think Missionary is actually that good. It can be useful on Clothier as well, but it has a few use cases. Next, we actually have a list from Captain Cleanup here, which is pretty interesting, and it's focused around Charizard and Kirlia Engine, and it's a pretty cool deck. I think Kirlia Engine's really cool, and they actually left a lot of feedback here. So I'm going to read this, and I will speed it up as well. Have you overcooked? Is it burnt? Looking forward to the feedback, and sorry for the essay. Okay, and here's a picture of the list, which is I think it's limitless, but when I like put the list into limitless, all the cards are on the left. So that's kind of interesting. If it's like justified some other way, it's just kind of weird. But anyway, so it is a Kirlia Charizard EX list. So Kirlia has the ability Refinement, discard 2 cards from your hand to draw. Sorry, discard 1 card from your hand to draw 2. And you have Gallade with the Buddy Catch ability, which lets you search your deck for any supporter card every turn. I think the 2 Gallade's kind of interesting. I feel like you essentially never need 2 in play because you never playing 2 supporters. That's just not something that the game lets you do. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if you necessarily need the second one, but I feel like the list doesn't desperately need any other cards. And then we see the 1 Charmeleon. We actually see 3 Charmanders and then 4 Charizard EXs, which was mentioned in what the person wrote. And that's fine, I guess, especially with the Hyperoma and like in less Ultra Balls and stuff like that. So that's fine. And then we see 3 Rare Candy. Again, I think that's fine. You will not be essentially ever Rare Candy and Gallade, and you will probably be using Rare Candy on, Charizards, and so maybe 2 Charizards, and that seems fine. Force Seal Stone I think is really good. I would put Rotom V. That's a pretty standard card in Charizard. Charizard Pidgeot, I should say. Not as common in Charizard, but Barrel, I guess. I mean, a lot of lists play like both together, but if you're just running Barrel, you don't necessarily need Rotom V. But I feel like Rotom V would be nice. NTV does have value. But yeah, I could see that. And they also said that like a student heavy ball could be good. I think a third Charmander or like a fourth Charmander could be good. And they also, I would not add Jirachi. I think Manaphy is definitely better than Jirachi, although you could cut it as well. I could see that being cut. But I don't think Jirachi is very good in the current format. It's mostly good against like Sableye, and Sableye isn't that common. So it's certainly something you will see from time to time, but I don't think you're actually that worried because by late game, you're evolved up enough. Certainly they can target your Kirlias. We do run Professor Toroscenario to heal up, and I think that'll catch them off guard, even though it's not that uncommon and pretty logical as well. Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking puts 2 cards on top of your deck. It's actually so good with the Kirlia Gallade engine. Like, so good. Because you can search that with Gallade, and then you can put the 2 cards you want on top of your deck, and then you can just get them immediately with Refinement, which is so good. So I think Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, I could even see a second copy of. And the supporter lineup seems kind of thin. I mean, it's a little weird. There's a lot of different supporters, and Cypher Maniacs, Code Breaking, Professor's Research, and I know are all one-ofs, but are all draw supporters and pretty solid. And the 3 Arvins are also pretty good. I would say I would add a Technical Machine Evolution as another tool. I think that would be so good in this list because it allows you to evolve your Kirlias right away. If you go turn 1 going second, that seems really good. And there are times when you're not set up to the level which you want. And instead of Rotom Ving, which you don't even play, you could just TM Evolution. And I think that would be super good because, you're not always attacking turn 2. You can attack turn 2 with NTV, and the list does run Magma Basin as well, and Radiant Charizard as well. Not attacking turn 2, but you could attack with that. I don't think Magma Basin's very good, to be honest. It's not really letting you attack that much sooner. Like, it's pretty rare. You can technically turn 1 attack as well, so if that's part of the plan, that's kind of interesting, but I feel like going for an evolution, the TM evolution attack called evolution, or going with Rotom V would be better. It's more common, but I do think it's better because you want to get into a good board state, especially with Kirlia, because with Kirlia you're guaranteed into a good board state. It's not like where you Rotom V and then you have like, oh, I have Rare Candy Pidgeot in hand, that's really good, but then you get Ionode and now you don't have that anymore. So I think that would be nice. And TM evolution, it is another tool, which is always good with Arvin. Arvin, you just need I think you generally want more or the same number of tools than Arvins because then you'll be Arvining late game and just not getting any tools, which isn't such a great feeling. And then, oh wait, no, it does run 4 rare candies. Okay, it does run 4 rare candies. They're not stacked for some reason. I think you could cut it to 3 rare candies though. It has some value. You could rare candy Gallade, and that's not bad. It's actually all right, but I could see 3 rare candies or 4 rare candies. I would not play 2 rare candies because you don't run Charmeleon. But if you do, I'd say drop a rare candy for Team Evolution maybe. And then you said that like the 6 fires is kind of low. Interesting reversal. It's a pretty cool card. I would say you could actually replace the reversal energy with a psychic energy and then run the memory skip Ralt. I think that's the name of the attack, which stops your opponent from using one of their attacks. So I think that's pretty cool as an option. How useful is it? I don't know. And how much like worse is it than reversal or better? It's like really different. Just a lot of levels. Because reversal energy, you can't really search out reversal very well. You have Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, but you're not running Pidgeot EX. You're running Gallade, which is about as good in a surprising amount of the time, but it's not getting your special energies, right? So reversal seems pretty awkward. It's useful against like Mimikyu, but I think the Psychic's better because it is recoverable with Super Rod as well, even outside of the memory skip Ralts. You mentioned adding a 4th Kirlia. I don't know. Hyper Room was an interesting ace spec. So what are like the options? I would not do Secret Box. I would not do Prime Catcher here either. Although I would play a Counter Catcher. I think a Counter Catcher could be pretty useful. It's a little awkward because it's not searchable with Glade. You want to get Boss, but you could do Prime Catcher if you want a Counter Catcher. But then I would add I think I do Unfair Stamp as the ace spec here. Hyper Roma is nice for getting 3 Kirlias, but you don't need 3 Kirlias. 3 Kirlias is a lot, and it's good, but it's not like Guard for EX, where Kirlia is like the really the most important card in the deck. It's certainly important. It's your engine, and it's what makes this deck unique. But you don't need three Kirlias, and you probably won't have three Kirlias in deck either, to be honest, because either one will be prized or one will be just in your hand already. And then you could get Charmeleon. It gets three stage ones, but like I don't know. I don't love it in this list, or I could see a second Charmeleon, but that doesn't feel so good. Um, so yeah, that's one thing I'd say. Also, why I don't play a split of Ralts. I don't think it matters much at all, but I think it's technically better just to play one. And then certainly if you add the Psychic, then you can think more about the Raltses. But um, then there's also the Kieran. It's a switch or a you do 30 more to your points active EX. And then in terms of damage buffs, right, you could run Maximum Belt, but I don't think you need it. I don't know. I don't play a ton of Charizard, though. I could see Maximum Belt being played here. Defiance Band, 30 more if you're down on prices, has use cases, a good chunk, and you could pair them together with Defiance Band and Kieran, but that's pretty rare because oftentimes you'll be Arvening for the Defiance Band. So um, I think Kieran's solid, especially if you run into Snorlax, which is then another reason to play the Psychic Energy, because Snorlax, they're going to go and they're going to trap the Gallade, and yes, you do have Turbo Scenario, and you can Palpat it back, maybe if they don't mill it with Misfortune Sisters or whatever, but, you can't always do that. You could also run a Team Yell's Cheer. Team Yell's Cheer recovers supporters or Pokemon, so that is a Pokemon recovery card. It's a supporter. It's searchable off of Gallade, but it is your supporter for turn, so there are some downsides to it, but if you are really worried about Snorlax, I'd add that in. I'd actually replace the Palpad with that if you were just really worried about Snorlax, but it's not a great card either. So in this deck, it's not a great card. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Magma Basin unless you are going for that turn one attack, which seems a little unlikely. You do also run a switch, but then you run Kieran and Turbo Scenario. I don't know. I don't think you need Kieran Turbo Scenario and a switch and the Palpad. Palpad is different than those cards by a lot, but it does allow you to switch extra. There is value in the switch though, so I could definitely see cutting the Kieran, not because it's a bad card, but because other cards really have it covered and can do more. Like switch can be really important early game. Honestly, switch isn't that important that often though. It's only important if you have like a multiple retreat attacker or Pokemon in the active, so that'd be Radiant Charizard, NTV, or Kirlia. Kirlia shouldn't be in the active really ever, unless they gust it up, but that's different. And then it would be in the active though if they or like Ralts could be in the active. You could start Ralts, but that has a one retreat, so you generally want to avoid evolving it and then retreat for one and then evolve if you can, which probably most of the time you can. And yeah, overall, I think pretty solid. Not too many changes I make. I didn't talk about vacuum. I think vacuum's fine. And yeah, I would replace the reversal with a psychic. I think that's better. Swirling Slice is 160 for 3. Move energy from it to your bench. When moving the reversal to your bench is like probably useless. It's honestly probably going to go into a Pokemon that can't use it. Or maybe like a Kirlia, but that's not that good. So if you have two Glades, you could like switch between them. That's you don't have a ton of switching. That's just not so good. And then um like if it gets sent to Charizard DX, then it gets turned off, which isn't so good. Or like NTV or like Ralts or whatever. So um yeah, I'm not a big fan of the reversal because it's not searchable either. Um so yeah, I mean I think the list is really fun. I think Curly Engine's pretty cool as well. But yeah, and then there's one last deck to talk about. This wasn't actually like a viewer submission. It's a little different, but I'll talk about that. Okay, and the last deck here is going to be a Swim Freely, Thwacky, Seeking deck with Goldeen as well. So this is pretty interesting. Swim Freely, for those of you who don't know. Also, sorry if the picture's a little hard to read. It's like a Pokemon Digi Live image from mobile, so it's like a little small. But the Finneon has its ability Ocean Accompaniment, which allows you to accelerate as much water energy as you want from your hand to your Pokemon and play with Swim Freely. Then you have Seeking. Seeking here does 60, 30 more for each water energy attached to it, which does work with Reversal, which I forgot. And then you have Goldeen with the ability Festival Lead, and Thwacky, the Goldeen's the pre-evolution to Seeking, and it's a basic one retreat as well, but doesn't matter here, the retreat cost. But Boom Boom Grove is Thwacky's ability, which says once during your turn, if your active has the ability Festival Lead, which Goldeen has, you can search your deck for any card and then just put it into your hand, which is so good, and you can do that for each Thwacky you have. So that's really good. So that's pretty interesting. and a really solid engine. It's like Pidgeot, but you don't need rare candies, which is so good. But then you have some, you have issues, right? So if you have Goldeen not in the active, you just don't have Goldeen in the active, then your engine doesn't work. And then if you have, Goldeen like in play, but then he gets knocked out, it doesn't work, which is an awkward issue. And then if Thwacky gets knocked out, then obviously it doesn't work either. So if you have multiple Thwackies and one gets knocked out, you can use the others, but still. Then you have the issue. You like evolve, you play it, then you evolve, and now you don't have any Goldeens to play either. So you just like can't use the engine. But hopefully that's all right. So you have to be a little careful there. You got some weird dynamics though, where your opponent can essentially just pass and then not knock you out, and then you can't use your engine so well. But hopefully not a huge issue. Outside of that, we got Gyarados as the main supporter of choice. Water Pokemon, just a good card, and lets you search for an item and lets you kind of set up. We see Cynthia's Ambush and Iono, Boss's Orders, all really solid. Survival Brace is it's the ace spec of choice. That is bold. I think this deck could actually really love the Hyper Aroma, searching for 3 stage 1s, because Thwacky, stage 1. We see a 1/1 Rabska here, which is a stage 1 protecting your bench. And we don't see TM Evolution. TM Evolution is like kind of important. Dragapult, this was, so this is actually a deck. I didn't say this, but it's a deck that I really, I like talked about in the video. And then this is why Popo Pop, or Pop Pop Pop, submitted this deck, and so that's why they brought it to me, because I like talked about it, and I talked about it a little, said a few things about it, but yeah, it's a really interesting deck. We see Letter of Encouragement and Earthen Vessel as well to get lots of energies in hand and superior energy retrieval, of course. So it's kind of like Chien-Pao Excalibur, but I described it as more volatile, which Chien-Pao Excalibur is already volatile. So that's kind of, it's weird. It's a really weird deck. I could see Prime Catch as well. We see one counter catcher, one boss, which is kind of low for gusts. But overall, it's a pretty cool deck. Nothing too crazy with the list, because you need lots of consistency and just lots of stuff to be able to get this deck to work. But overall, really cool deck, and just a cool concept. I think I brought the concept up originally in one of my videos, but yeah. So that's all for today's video, though. I hope you enjoyed. As I said, submit your decks down below. Sorry, I'm talking really fast. I don't know. I'm just excited, to be honest. But I hope you are too, because I want to make this a series where I talk about your decks and go over your content. But I hope you enjoyed. As always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.